Ethan and Claire Rivers looked like the couple everyone wanted to be: two smiling parents, two happy kids, and a life that seemed wrapped in gentle love. But when Ethan surprised Claire with a romantic trip to a quiet mountain cabin, no one knew it was the beginning of a chilling plan that would leave Claire dead, Ethan in handcuffs, and their perfect family shattered forever. Ethan and Claire Rivers lived in a quiet neighborhood where the mornings smelled of fresh coffee and the evenings were filled with the laughter of children playing in small front yards. Their home was a modest two-story house with white shutters and a small garden Claire tended carefully, planting bright yellow daisies every spring. Neighbors often saw them taking evening walks together, Claire's hand always lightly resting on Ethan's arm, their two young children running ahead to catch the breeze. From the outside, they were everything people admired and quietly wished to have: a family that smiled at each other during grocery trips, parents who attended every school event, a couple that posted smiling photos with matching mugs on cold mornings, friends who visited often left with warm bread from Claire's kitchen, and stories about how the Rivers family always seemed so together, so content. Ethan ran a small but growing construction business, spending his days on sites, supervising projects, and occasionally returning home with dust on his boots and a tired smile for Claire. She would have dinner ready, and they would sit around the small dining table with their children, telling stories about their day. Claire, who worked part-time at a local bakery, loved sharing stories of customers who came in for coffee, telling Ethan about the old man who bought a pie every Wednesday, and the young mother who always came in with her toddler, leaving small sticky fingerprints on the counter. Their days were filled with simple routines, and their nights were spent watching old movies on the couch, Claire's head resting on Ethan's shoulder, a warm blanket wrapped around them as the children slept upstairs. Claire kept their family's life documented on social media, posting pictures of Ethan fixing the fence in the backyard, of the children in matching pajamas on Christmas morning, of the cupcakes she baked for school fundraisers, each photo capturing a moment that made others believe the Rivers family was living a gentle, beautiful life. She often wrote captions about gratitude, about loving her family, about how blessed she felt to have a husband who supported her and children who made her days bright, even when they were messy and loud. These posts would gather likes from friends and comments from family members who called them the perfect family, and in many ways, Claire believed it too. She believed they had created a small world of happiness, protected from the chaos outside. So when Ethan surprised Claire with a romantic trip to a remote mountain cabin for their 10th wedding anniversary, everyone who knew them thought it was just another beautiful gesture in a love story that was still growing. Claire's eyes sparkled when she told her sister about it, sharing how Ethan had booked a cabin near a quiet lake, far from the noise of town, where they could watch the sunrise together and spend their days walking in the forest. She imagined mornings with warm tea on the porch, evenings with the fireplace crackling, and the peace of a weekend away to reconnect, just the two of them. Like when they were young and newly in love, they planned it carefully, arranging for Claire's sister to watch the children while they took this much-needed break. Ethan packed the car while Claire packed her favorite sweaters and books, telling her friends she was looking forward to taking photos of the misty mornings over the lake. As they pulled out of their driveway, waving goodbye to their children, it felt like a promise of a quiet, tender escape, a moment of pause in their busy, shared life. No one could have imagined that the family who seemed so perfect was driving toward a darkness that would change everything, leaving only questions in the spaces where laughter and warmth used to live. The road to the mountains was long, winding through dense trees and climbing steadily higher as Ethan and Claire left behind the familiar roads of their small town. The air grew cooler as they climbed, the sunlight flickering through the thick branches overhead, and Claire felt the excitement rising in her chest as she glanced out the window, watching as small streams trickled down mossy rocks by the roadside. She reached for her phone, taking pictures of the narrow roads bordered by wildflowers, the sweeping views of green valleys below them, and the way the clouds hung low over the peaks. It felt like a promise of peace, a pause from the schedules and the constant motion of everyday life. The cabin was small and wooden, with a wraparound porch that faced a quiet lake, its surface smooth as glass under the gray sky. There was a small dock that reached out over the water, and Claire imagined herself sitting there in the early morning with a blanket wrapped around her shoulders, sipping hot tea while watching the fog lift from the trees across the lake. Inside, the cabin smelled faintly of cedar, and the fireplace set ready with neatly stacked logs, promising warmth as the nights grew colder. Claire unpacked slowly, placing her books on the small bedside table, setting her sweater on the rocking chair, and taking a moment to look out the window, where the trees moved gently in the breeze. Ethan seemed calm as he brought in the rest of the bags, checking the fridge and the small kitchen, moving with the steady familiarity of a man who had planned everything carefully. Claire noticed how he placed his phone on the counter, turned off, saying they should enjoy the weekend without distractions, just the two of them, like before the children, before work took over their conversations, before their days were filled with alarms and deadlines. Claire smiled, agreeing, feeling a soft warmth at the thought of being seen, of being prioritized, of being loved enough for Ethan to plan this trip. They spent the first evening walking along the lake, their shoes crunching on the narrow gravel path, the air cool and damp with the scent of pine and water. Claire took pictures of the sunset, the way the pink light reflected on the water, the silhouette of the trees standing tall and dark as the light slipped away. She posted a photo on her social media, adding a caption about finding peace in the stillness, about the beauty of quiet moments. Friends and family commented quickly, sending hearts and messages telling her how beautiful the place looked, how happy they were for her, how lucky she was to have a husband who would plan such a thoughtful trip. As darkness settled in, they returned to the cabin and lit the fireplace, the warmth filling the small room as Claire pulled her knees to her chest on the couch, watching the flames dance and listening to the sound of the wind moving through the trees outside. It felt like the world had shrunk to the soft crackle of the fire and the quiet breaths they took, wrapped in a moment of fragile peace. But as Claire drifted to sleep that night, she did not know that Ethan had left the cabin after she had fallen asleep, driving back down the winding roads into the small town they had passed on their way up. She did not know that he had gone into a hardware store, purchasing a large hunting knife and rope, items he quietly placed under the seat of the car before returning to the cabin before dawn, slipping back inside without waking her. She did not know that while she posted photos of sunrise and wrote words of gratitude, Ethan was preparing for something far darker than a romantic weekend, setting in motion a plan that would take the soft quiet of the mountains and turn it into the beginning of a nightmare neither of them could ever leave behind. The third day at the cabin started with gray clouds gathering over the lake, the air heavy and cold, pressing against the windows as Claire stood at the porch, wrapped in her sweater, holding a cup of tea that had already turned lukewarm in her hands. She took a few photos of the fog rolling in, intending to post them later with a caption about the beauty of the stillness, but her phone remained in her pocket as she watched the water, feeling a strange, unsettled heaviness in her chest that she could not explain. Inside, Ethan moved around the kitchen quietly, his footsteps slow on the wooden floor, his eyes glancing at Claire from the window, watching her without expression, as if waiting for something to happen. Later that morning, the clouds broke in two. A light drizzle, thin streams of rain moving across the glass, blurring the view of the dock and the trees. The sound soft but constant. Claire pulled her hair into a loose bun and decided to take a walk despite the weather, saying she wanted to breathe the air and clear her head, wanting to feel the cold mist on her skin. She slipped her shoes on and left, closing the door gently behind her, unaware that this simple decision would be the last time she would be seen alive by the outside world. The rain soaked into her sweater, and she felt the cold moving through her skin as she walked along the path by the lake, small puddles forming along the gravel, the leaves glistening with drops of water. Hours passed, and the rain stopped, leaving the ground wet, and the air smelling of pine and damp earth. Ethan's car was seen driving down the narrow roads toward town later that day, his face calm, eyes hidden behind sunglasses, hands steady on the wheel as he stopped at a small gas station to buy coffee, greeting the clerk with a tired smile. Back at the cabin, the door remained closed, the fireplace cold, Claire's book still lying on the rocking chair where she had left it the night before. Her phone, tucked into the pocket of her sweater, would never post the photo she had taken that morning. The screen dark, the battery slowly draining until it was dead. By the next morning, Ethan returned home alone, pulling into the driveway of their quiet neighborhood, where the children waited at the window, waving, expecting their mother to step out with stories of the trip. Instead, Ethan stepped out alone, his face pale, his hands shaking slightly as he hugged his children, telling them gently that their mother had gone for a walk and had not come back. He told Claire's sister that he had searched the entire area, calling out her name until his voice went raw, but there was no answer. Only the sound of the wind moving through the trees and the soft lapping of the water against the dock. The news spread quickly, turning the peaceful image of a family trip into a sharp, cold story of a missing mother. Flyers with Claire's smiling face were posted around town. Volunteers gathered with flashlights and search dogs, walking through the dense woods, calling her name, hoping she had simply lost her way and would be found, shivering but alive, near the lake or along the trails. But the forest remained silent, the search teams finding nothing but damp leaves and empty paths, the lake quiet and still, as if it had swallowed the truth, leaving behind only questions that no one could answer. As the perfect family's world began to crumble into fear and confusion, Ethan sat at the dining table in their once warm kitchen, the place that had been filled with the smell of Claire's cinnamon bread and the sound of their children's laughter, now heavy with silence. The house felt colder with every passing day that Claire remained missing, the curtains drawn to keep away the worried looks of neighbors who passed by, whispering about the perfect family that was no longer perfect. The children moved quietly around the house, asking for their mother in small voices, clutching their stuffed toys as they peeked around corners, hoping to see her coming through the door with that soft smile she always wore when she came home. Police officers visited often, their uniforms sharp against the fading wallpaper of the living room, asking Ethan the same questions repeatedly. They noted the small inconsistencies in his story, how he claimed he had searched the woods for hours, yet there was no mud on his shoes or scratches on his arms from the thick underbrush. His phone records showed that he had driven away from the cabin late that night, miles away from the forest, where he said he was looking for Claire. They found receipts from a hardware store in town where Ethan had purchased a large hunting knife and rope the night before Claire disappeared, a purchase he had not mentioned when questioned. Claire's family grew restless, her sister pressing the police for updates, unable to understand how a walk could turn into a disappearance with no trace left behind. They demanded searches of the cabin and the surrounding woods, hoping for any sign, a piece of fabric, a footprint, anything to prove she was alive or to give them an answer to the sleepless nights that consumed them. The cabin became a place of interest, its small rooms and the lake outside no longer peaceful, but filled with the chilling tension as officers walked through with cameras, taking photos of the unmade bed, the teacup still on the porch, the book left open on the rocking chair. Digital evidence soon revealed a hidden truth. Investigators found a small hidden camera installed in the cabin, one that had been recording for days without Claire's knowledge. The footage showed moments of their last days, Claire standing on the porch, taking photos of the sunrise, Ethan watching her with a gaze that seemed calm but held a coldness that now made sense only in the light of what had happened. One recording captured them sitting by the fireplace, where Claire's voice trembled as she confronted Ethan about missing money from their account, her hands fidgeting with the edge of her sweater as she tried to understand why bills were unpaid. Despite Ethan claiming business was good, the footage also showed Ethan's face hardening, a flash of anger crossing his eyes before he looked away, his jaw clenching as Claire's words filled the quiet of the cabin. It was clear now that Ethan had debts he had hidden from Claire, debts that had become heavy enough to bury any love they once shared. It was discovered that Ethan had taken out a large life insurance policy on Claire only a few months before their anniversary, a policy Claire had never signed knowingly, her signature forged on the documents that promised a payout should anything happen to her. As the evidence grew, the perfect image of Ethan and Claire's life shattered under the weight of each discovered lie, each piece of truth pulling back the curtain on the carefully crafted image of a family that appeared to have everything. The neighbors who once admired them stopped in front of their house now only to stare, their conversations in hushed tones, unable to understand how a romantic trip meant to celebrate love had turned into a carefully planned step toward something dark, something final, leaving the once warm home cold, empty, and haunted by the truth that was beginning to surface. 3 weeks after Claire's disappearance, hikers taking a path rarely used by visitors stumbled upon a patch of freshly disturbed earth under a cluster of pine trees, far from where the search teams had focused their efforts. The air smelled of damp leaves and moss, and birds scattered as the hikers backed away, calling the police with shaking voices, unable to believe what they had found. When officers arrived, they carefully cleared the area, pulling away branches and soil, uncovering the body of Claire Rivers, her sweater torn and stained, her hair matted with dirt and leaves, her hands folded as if she had tried to protect herself in her final moments. Close by, hidden beneath a thin layer of leaves, the police recovered the hunting knife Ethan had purchased, its handle bearing his fingerprints, the blade still marked with traces of blood that would later match Claire's. The discovery confirmed what many had already begun to suspect, but the confirmation sent a wave of grief and shock through the community that had once looked at the Rivers family as an image of quiet, gentle happiness. Candlelight vigils were held outside Claire's home, neighbors leaving flowers at the doorstep, the children's toys placed next to the candles, small reminders of the family that had been broken beyond repair. Ethan was arrested quietly one morning, let out of his home in handcuffs as his children watched from the window, clutching each other in confusion as police cars filled the street, the lights flashing against the windows that once framed their mother's smiling face. Ethan's expression was blank, a hollow look in his eyes as he was placed into the back of the car, the whispers of neighbors filling the morning air, people who had once shared meals with them, who had once praised Ethan for his dedication to his family, now unable to meet his eyes as the reality of his betrayal settled in. During the investigation, it was revealed that Ethan's business had been failing for months, his debts piling up while he maintained the image of stability for Claire and the children. The life insurance policy he had taken out on Claire would have cleared his debts and left him with enough money to start over, a plan that he had set into motion under the disguise of a romantic anniversary trip. The photos Claire had taken during the first days of the trip were used as part of the timeline of her last days. The sunrise over the lake, the misty morning, the quiet path along the water, all moments she believed were part of a celebration of love, but which were in reality moments counting down to the end she never saw coming. The trial drew heavy media attention, the story of the perfect family turned tragedy, capturing headlines, people unable to reconcile the smiling family photos with the facts being presented in court. Friends and family of Claire attended the hearings, their faces pale, hands clutching tissues as they listened to the details of how her final moments were stolen by the person she trusted most. Social media accounts that once displayed family picnics and smiling children were now flooded with messages of sorrow and anger, reminders of how a crafted image can hide the darkest truths beneath its surface. Ethan was found guilty of Claire's murder, sentenced to life in prison, leaving the children to be raised by Claire's sister, who kept a small framed photo of Claire in the children's room so they would never forget the mother who had loved them with every gentle moment of her life. The house that once held warmth remained quiet, a reminder that even the most perfect-looking family can carry secrets so heavy they eventually destroy everything, turning what was meant to be a romantic trip into a chilling story of betrayal and loss that the town would remember for years to come.